And then suddenly at 2 or 3 meters from ourselves, parallel, came a polar bear and passed us downwind, and bit by bit started coming towards us. Suddenly we had to retreat. Intense moments. I'll go through a number of places that you may not even have heard of. I hope you do. But they are to be found, as you can see, on the top, the very top of our Earth, and then the southern part, it being Antarctica, so far away from the south of America, the south of Africa, yet so cold because it's so far away from the sun rays. I'm still in awe of what happened at the end of the 1800s when Adrien de Gerlache, with his three-master de Belgica, went to represent our small nation in Antarctica and become the first expedition to overwinter there, with very famous people on board. Probably you know Amundsen, who was the first to reach the South Pole in 1911, and then Dr. Cook, who was also a very famous yet controversial persona in the Arctic. So these people have, in totally different circumstances and had higher risk than us modern polar explorers, they paved the way for us human beings to go there. Today, of course, everything has become easier. You don't have to spend 4 or 5 years to get there. Now we can take boats, we can take our sailboats, we can use the airplanes, and then we arrive there. Now, with a crew, an international crew, I tried to get the spirit of these people, and we took our sailboat, the Euronaf Belgica, to reenact that expedition, and it has been a real true pleasure to reenact that fully and understand better today what these pioneers did. Totally different story, of course, today when we are connected with iridium phones and we use high-tech gear to become more ambitious, of course. I don't think Amundsen, Scott, Peary, all of these pioneers would have believed us if we today say that we can progress in one day over a distance of 200, 300, 400 kilometers with snow kites. This would have been unheard of. But yet, you know, it's important to know that these things are possible today. So yes, I think it's amazing that with our technical revolutions, we get to fly to Cape Town and the next day we fly to Antarctica, or we take a plane to Norway and then suddenly we're in Longyearbyen, where we wait 1 or 2 days and then off we're to the North Pole. So is that a sad thing? I don't know. I wish I could have been one of those pioneers from the past, but then at the same time, there's nothing wrong in embracing technology and then suddenly realizing that we can be more ambitious. The feeling of cold, the feeling of being alone, being cut off from society and all of the luxuries is still the same. It's quite a shock, I must admit, and for the people I bring along as clients, they of course find that very intriguing to see what happens with a human being when you're suddenly robbed of all of the temperatures, the warmth, and the good food. That is truly one of the important things that I try to share with people. You know, the beauty only can be appreciated when you're sometimes alone or when it's calm. Sometimes the cold also tells you that maybe it's good to reappreciate the warmth for what it is. So, you know, all through these expeditions that took 1, 2, 3, 4 years to prepare, I really invested a lot of my time ameliorating equipment, trying to reinvent myself and finding new departure points, new equipment, preferably not competing with other expeditions that had done the expeditions before us, because I would hate myself for just being a competitor and doing an expedition faster than the previous ones. Unfortunately, that's not part of polar exploration, and I do not judge, but I think I've taken the path of pioneering because there's something more adventurous in it. Otherwise, you can just copy and paste whatever you like to do that has already been done. It's also more risk-filled. Any expedition that you have to think up and you don't have any guarantees of succeeding, of success, it takes a little more courage to go out and find partners to tell them, look, you know, I may fail, I may be successful, but I believe in true pioneering. And so I, you know, for the future as well, I'll try to keep that in mind and stay in that mindset. So the important thing, I think, is that you can be ambitious and reach grand goals if you're one happy human being. Yes, you must be ambitious and you must take care of your machine, your body. You must also study your brain, how motivated you are and how much of a beating you can take. That is all part of the preparation. But the final goal is that you come back home enriched, that you can also tell your stories to anyone who wants to hear it, that you can motivate people who want to do the same. And for family, friends, colleagues, you must be enriched on the level of performance, being able to be more patient, to be a good listener, to be part of the bigger world with other people who have other things to say. So that's the final goal. When I put all of that experience, expertise in function of guiding, I also know that you cannot shock people. You need to construct a multi-level approach whereby people learn step by step. And therefore, it's good to take your time as a participant to get to know what cold means, get to know the equipment, get to know your fellow colleagues on the ice. And then I suggest a 9-day expedition in level 1 in Spitsbergen. That is quite high. You're very high up. It's also the jumping off point for the North Pole. When people feel comfortable or they have a past in climbing, if people have already done their winter camping, well, then of course they're welcome to join level 2. This goes through a questionnaire, and quickly I see when people have already enough experience to come along to Iceland, Spitsbergen level 2, Greenland, Lake Baikal. And then the story goes on when people have tried snowkiting and they become proficient, they become an expert in it, then we can consider a longer expedition in Antarctica or the North Pole. So these things, they present themselves in a very organic matter. I have tried to first explain in this very clip the big difference that make it so different to go to the Arctic or to Antarctica, because your mindset must be different, your equipment must be different. So we'll launch this little clip and it will explain in a nutshell what the differences are. When you go to Antarctica or Arctica, you will immediately see that there's an ocean. The Arctic is actually just an ocean with a very flimsy, thin ice layer, while Antarctica is a lot of frozen ice, 4 kilometers thick. The Arctic has only 2 to 3 meters of ice, so that's a big difference. Antarctica has an ice cap that is so thick that it doesn't move, while the Arctic Ocean is in constant movement. Also, the humidity in the Arctic is much higher. It feels colder, while in Antarctica it's nicer, it's dry. The salinity in the air also makes expeditions harder, while you can just take the ice and make your dinner without being afraid of having salt. The Arctic is uninhibited. Spitsbergen, Canada, Siberia, while there are only part-time residents in Antarctica. Lots of beasties in Antarctica, only around the edges, while you have many animals that roam around on the Arctic ice. Now, yes, there are national claims in the Arctic because everyone wants a piece of that fishing territorial piece. But the most important part is that we know that it's not just one wide expanse. You can discover colors, you can discover all sorts of fauna and flora, and hopefully you become a good ambassador for that very precious part of our globe. What is clearly something important is that we share it. People are intrigued. They sometimes don't know what to do with the cold. They don't know what to do with equipment. Hopefully they've prepared well, but out on the ice, of course, us guides will do their utmost to constantly explain. There's never panic. There shouldn't be, because we have prepared well, and it's one continuous learning process. To explain it a little more clearly, what these levels mean, in Spitsbergen we go on foot or snowshoes when the snow is deep. We march about 5 hours a day. The expedition is 5 to 8 days, plus travel from where you come and then back home. Maximum of 12 participants. Level 2 in Greenland or the other places like Alaska, Lake Baikal. Well, we also go on foot, but skiing is also integrally part of the expedition. So it's not downhill skiing, it's marching. But some people are not so keen for skiing. This is easy. You just march and adapt to the sliding motion. And we invite people to have a first day of snowkiting. Little more hours a day, 6 to 8, 2 weeks expedition, and maximum 8 participants. And then we go on level 3, North and South Pole, foot, crampons, skis, snow kites, anything to progress. 8 or more hour days is standard because we're more ambitious. And yes, it goes up to a month of expedition or more. 6 participants is the maximum for one guide in the polar regions to guide safely. You know, you have to remain humble because Mother Nature will always be more powerful than us. In that respect, it's so wonderful to start early in the season, for example, for a trans-Arctic expedition or in Spitsbergen or wherever we go, and try to chase the northern lights. We have to be lucky. Today, online, you can already see what prognosis is for the northern lights, but it's truly magic. You can feel the knisper of the electricity in the air. It's in constant movement, aesthetically so beautiful, very colorful. So I truly wish that for anyone who would like to go to the polar regions, whether or not they come along with us, but that truly is an experience. Something also very important is, of course, that we find ourselves in one of these areas where you can see, where you can sense that something is happening with these polar regions. Either more bare ground, some places you can see that there is permafrost that is melting. Well, in that sphere, I believe we have to encourage anything that people do, organizations, solitary initiatives, or scientists, to bring the attention to the problems in the Arctic or Antarctica. What you see here is a photo of the global seed vault, which was an initiative of the people in Svalbard and the Norwegians to store all of the world's seeds. You never know that suddenly there will be a moment where Armageddon strikes, or that all seeds are lost to disasters. Well, here they're safely stored in a tunnel in the permafrost, and I think it's just such a symbol for the future of humanity. And you know, we can rest assured that we can farm again when Armageddon strikes. Yes, the polar regions are a harsh environment. There is no secret. The cold is there. There is wind. You are far away from your average supermarket, so no illusions. Everything has remained the same still since the time of the pioneers. But I can also assure you, as soon as your day is over, once you're in the tent, it's marvelous. It's like a little bubble of relative warmth. You get fed, you can listen to some incredibly intense music, and you have your fellow polar explorers to pay a visit in their tent. So it's really a fun time to spend in the tent. Also, I have to bring the realities of life on the Arctic Ocean, in this case, to a reality. This is a magnificent predator, but he's not my friend. I prefer not to see him, not even at a kilometer's distance, nor at the door of our tents. More intense moments, of course, are in the Antarctic, for example, when the sun shines. And then suddenly you think, wait a minute, it's +5 degrees. Is this still the endangered Antarctic people? Yes, of course. And then we go for a bath in a nice little swimming pool that you can see here. Yes, the water is just above freezing, and it is not fun, but it allows us to take a nice little bath. More beautiful ice is to be found in these mega structures of these icebergs. They are not always as translucent and blue as this, but it's an open invitation to go climb, and you know, they make for good pictures, of course, but it's too inviting to go climb in Antarctica. It's wonderful. Another nice thing to do is, of course, since I like to kiteboard and do all of the stuff that is water related, kiteboarding in Antarctica was a first for us, but it's truly not as bad as you would think. If you wear a dry suit, it's very comfortable. Of course, your face and the hands get cold, but if you keep busy, it's truly wonderful. The backdrop of these mega glaciers, of course, is wonderful. Truly, they are images that stay with me forever. Yes, of course, we like to take a photo, but they never represent what I store in my little computer up there. They are, you know, usually once in a lifetime experiences. When I talk to people to talk about how they experience these three people, two 67-year-old brothers and one of their sons, they said that it was the togetherness as a family that was number one. The second, number two on their list was the harshness, being in tune with the wind, the ice, the sun, all of the elements, truly using your senses to sniff it up, to take it up as a human being, not used to function in such a harsh habitat. So that was wonderful. Other people, number three on the list was the intense mother-daughter relationships, or other people that get to know each other on the ice and then share deep stories of their lives. So, you know, it can be anything. I'd like to say that it's never the sportive exploit, because you can, you know, do sports at home, and being depleted of energy, you can feel that buzz at home. But being one with the elements is truly amazing. Colors are there, the deep blue, the grays, the whites, of course, they are there. And so it's up to us to feel the slight differences in humidity, to see the wonder in the fine things. It's like a painting. People who appreciate colors of a Van Gogh are amazed by the texture, by the finer details. It's the same when you spend the day out on the Arctic Ocean or any of the other polar regions. Sometimes it's the contrast of nothing. Sometimes we see nothing. Then suddenly, as a fata morgana, something arises at the horizons, and it attracts our attention. We want to go there. And suddenly you see these magnificent creatures of Mother Nature, and then suddenly you see your colleague that is a harsh confrontation of vague gray and harsh red, it representing a human being. So, you know, our brain is never bored. They may be long hours, but you always see something. This is the Arctic Ocean that we discussed. Suddenly, with the dynamics of currents underneath the ice, or the impact of the wind onto the ice, the puzzle starts moving, and you see that there's a birth of leads, they call them, open water, and making the reflection of seeing that dark water. You must know that it's 4 kilometers deep before you hit the rock bottom of the Arctic Ocean, which is incredible. I like reflecting on all of that. And of course, we have to go on, and the crack is perpendicular to our marching direction, and then we have to use our sleds to crawl over. Or sometimes we have to sit on 2 sleds and paddle over a bigger lead. When you're on one side, this person on the right sees maybe the other side's moving from left to right, while the other person on the other side sees the opposite. And who's right? Which side is it moving? I don't know. It is only by flicking on your GPS that you'll see, hey, I'm moving to the west or to the east, but visually you're in a completely strange world that is sometimes an illusion. Also, it's very fun to tell you that you work hard to get to the North Pole, that imaginary point on our Earth, and then you don't see anything. So you have reached a point where there's nothing, because should have the previous expedition left behind a stick or a flag, it would have moved away. So it's an imaginary, non-factual point, because the lines that we humans have drawn in an imaginary way to that point are not there. And then when you are on the spot, when you flick on the GPS, you see, haha, we're at the North Pole, but 1 second later, you have drifted away. So it's a great lesson for life. Strive hard, work hard, be happy when you reach a goal, but it's a split second that you're there. You must think again and strive towards a new goal for the future, because it's gone.
Perfect.
So it's funny. Sometimes we also have fun crawling into grottos or ice caves. There's so much to be seen away from the 360 degree of nothingness. You just have to be creative and find new beauty. For example, this photo is Lake Baikal, which I have found amazing, because aesthetically, Mother Nature, in cooperation with the dynamics of the sweet, the lake ice that is not salty, it infiltrates oxygen a little deeper and makes all of these beautiful paintings like this, or multi-layered white illusionary paintings. So I found that so remarkably beautiful. And this is only 2 years ago when I, for the first time, went to Lake Baikal. I thought I had seen it all, but no, there are beautiful things to see and do. This ice is very slick, so I had brought a sail with short lines, and suddenly there is no friction and you don't need much wind to progress. It's wonderful to discover new things. Also, after my little story of the North Pole, there is a South Pole, the geographic South Pole, and there you find this plaque, and people are there. There's a scientific station, and that is for the simple reason that the Antarctic doesn't move. You have ice that by the accumulation of snow is compressed and sits on the rock bottom. However, even that ice moves very slightly, because in 10,000 or 100,000 years, that one snowflake will go back eventually by gravity. So ever so slowly, maybe a couple of meters per year, the snow at the very South Pole will start moving on its journey back to the ocean, which is also a journey of discovery, but for non-human matter. What, of course, I find truly magnificent, because it combines my passion for kiting, windsurfing at the time, and North Pole or South Pole discovery is snow kiting. And especially since it opened new doors for new itineraries, new expeditions. When you walk and you pull a sled, for our clients it's 30 to 40 kilos. For us ambitious souls, we take these sleds weighing almost 200 kilos. We can progress in one day 200 kilometers, 300, 400 kilometers without investing as much energy as pulling by man-hauling, pulling the sled manually. So this is incredible. It opened new doors, and I think up till now I've just accumulated under 20,000 kilometers or so with all of these expeditions. I still love it, and I hope, even in COVID times, to go to Greenland in 3 weeks' time and go from the south to the north. These are just some of the images that give you an idea of how beautiful that is. And then, as I also said, the tent is just a wonderful place to be, because you can take refuge from the harshness of the terrain, the wind. The accumulation of snow, of course, will start grasping that tent. if you would leave that tent for one winter, it would have disappeared because everything goes up to the tent and wants to cling to it. So sometimes you have to dig out the snow that is around the tent. But, you know, I write in the tent. I read also what people have written for me. You reflect on your daily life. You reflect on your very valuable friends and family. You refocus, you reappreciate. It's a wonderful place to, you know, just be human again, away from all of the commerce and all of the rat race things, all of the materialism. I wish that for everyone. Nobody likes, you know, difficulty. That's not inherent to our appreciation. We need to prepare, and then when you are in a tent and you have, for example, multicolored bags. Number one bag is your socks, your gloves, and your headgear. Number two bag, you know by heart that it's your fleeces and all of the other stuff. Number three is your personal stuff. You don't have to get frustrated, and you can blindfold, just reach out and you have what you need. Also, putting up a tent, you need to practice that a number of times so that you don't have to get frustrated that it's not going well. Making signs in order to communicate must be studied in advance. So it takes truly a good couple of months before you feel comfortable. Why? Because then suddenly you'll have time to look around. You'll have time to take photos or to have a good conversation with your friends. So, you know, preparation is key. And yeah, I wish that everyone does that thoroughly. Reading. Why not go on YouTube and watch all of the polar videos that are online? You'll start to understand why it's so important. Also, equipment can break. If you don't handle it well, it will break and give you a lot of problems out in the field. Sailing is another story. I'm not a sailorman, so in our crew of 7, I left the sailboat to a skipper. I have to use my expertise, and so this is part of the experience preparing a boat for Arctic or Antarctic journeys, but it's not my cup of tea. So delegation is also an art. Delegate with trust, and you can focus on your own expertise. Some of the younger people go for the kick, which is fine. This is a young sailor, Rumen Grozev from Bulgaria, who was very funny, and we'd love to have him on our team. But he wanted to jump off an iceberg and go for a dive. Fine, we have to be creative, and he did very well. Other more serene participants like to go at midnight, which is here in the Antarctic, a midnight paddle, very serene, also very fun. So you see that the Arctic or the Antarctic offers more ways to progress. It's not always pulling a sled and marching. That some people may find boring. There's so much more to do. Like biking, why not? We have embraced the new technology of fat biking, and why not? Pulling a sled is harder because to produce an even force forward makes the sled, you know, a little bouncy or jerky, but not impossible. Again, as I said, equipment is key. Your body needs to be ready. That's a robot. I would say invest 20% of your time in physical preparedness and you'll be fine. Walk 5-6 hours in a row and you'll be good. You don't have to be Mr. or Mrs. Ironman. There's no need to be. You just need to be flexible, have good blood flow in your body, and then you're fine. That's a robot, and it will do what you instruct it to do with your mind. Equipment is also a formality. You just have to study it in depth. Put some insulation around a thermos. A metal thermos would feel cold, etc. I can go on and on, but yes, you need to get acquainted and use all of the equipment, feel comfortable with it. The real stuff is finding the time to study yourself. How will I react when I feel lonely, sad, when I feel depleted, when my machine, my body is not functioning well anymore? Well, then you have to go and study a bit of mental strength. Find people that can inspire you. Someone who sits in a wheelchair will probably put you back at ease because you have the privilege of a moving body. So suddenly, if you realize that some people, we give speeches in prisons, we've made friends with prisoners, yes, they have something to say about solitude and being enclosed in a very limited space. Well, sometimes in a storm, we sit for 5 days waiting to go outside again. But with the knowledge of these people, suddenly you become enriched. So that's a bit of a challenge. Get to know yourself a little better. Find solutions to the problem. Make it a pragmatic list of, say, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 solutions to one problem, and it won't be that difficult. On a pragmatic level, we all have cold hands. We all have cold feet. Our face gets cold. But there are a number of practical hints so as to make it nicer. You have to eat well. You have to sleep well. That's the inner machine. But then, how do you prevent moisture from entering the insulation layer? Well, you make that second layer, which is like a surgical glove or that blue bag, the vapor barrier liner. Prevent the moisture that comes from your hands and from your feet to enter the thicker mitt and the outer mitt. That will stay dry. And suddenly, your hands will not get that cold. It's the air that settles between the textile that needs to be warmed up. If there's moisture, you cannot heat it up anymore because that's just dynamics. The same for the boot. If your boot gets wet, try to make it dry in a tent. It's a no-go. After a week, you'll have frozen boots. So we need to, at all times, try to prevent moisture from entering our clothing. Same story for the face. When we exhale or we transpire, the sweat coming from our cheeks, well, it will, if kept warm, it will not freeze on our nose. It will get away from our face and rise up, and then it will settle itself in the ruff that keeps the transmission of the heat of our face warm. And so every hour or so you have to take off the frost, and then you can go on for an hour or two. The most dangerous parts are your nose. As you can see, there's a little bit of frostbite at the nostrils, your lips, and those you need to give a good smear of a stick that is both a protector and a sun protector at the same time. So every hour or so you need to eat, drink, reapply, shake off, and so there's a traditional 5 to 10 minute break in which we have to do a couple of things that are holy. So now, parallel to our own ambitions and our wish to complete an expedition, we believe that we can do something in return for scientists or institutions, for the public at large. And so we embrace the scientific mission to collect data and then pass them on to universities. Such as here, we dig a hole 2 meters deep, measure the different layers as you can faintly see, take a certain amount of ice with that ice core, the metal cylinder, put it in a plastic bag, determine the density by weighing, and so on and so on. I will not go into that, but I think since we're there anyways, sometimes these scientists cannot go to these far out places because it's expensive or it's too cold, it's too difficult to get to. Well, why not partake in these scientific missions? Something else is on the Arctic Ocean, then the measurement of the thickness of the snow every 40 kilometers. And so every day we do that with the hope that we can contribute to the prognosis of the melting of the ice. So that's, on the side. We leave behind beacons and they will live their own lives because we leave them there, and then the scientists can monitor how quick and in which direction they go. Or we launch meteorological apparatuses in a stationary kite, multiple 4 or 5, up to an altitude of 200 meters, and so on. I think it's important, whatever we can do and is appreciated, I think it's worth investing 1.5 to 2 hours per day for that. Science is also a contribution to an enabler for our expeditions. We have to study the maps in detail. For example, this map, where you can see the katabatic winds, very specific winds in the polar regions. And with these maps and the findings of many people, scientists, we can, for example, in my head, I see a faint circular direction of all of these lines. Sitting in a cozy chair in the winter with a cognac and something to eat, I love to read books or study maps. And it's with this image that I've come to a novel idea, namely starting at a point, using those winds, making a circular route and coming back to the starting point, which we have not fully been able to do in Antarctica, but I hope to conclude this circle. We did 5,000 and some kilometers, and in a year and a half time, I hope to close that circle, because that was the theory behind this expedition, is to start and end at the same spot. We did it in Greenland in 2014, proving the theory that it is possible to do expeditions in a circular mode, but I need to do this one. Yes, I have been talking about our responsibilities as polar explorers. It's not easy to, in a nutshell, such as in a webinar like this, tell you whatever is on our mind. It's too short a time. There's so much more to be told. And so in the end, I hope that, I've tried to make sense, both the beauty, the intensity, and the concerns I have for Polar Explorer. The real story is to be found out on the ice, and that's an open invitation for anyone who's listening right now, but anyone who wants to come along. It's a beautiful, very intense world, and it's worth sharing. So I think we've come to the point where I've talked enough.